Hello again, it's me Mandala, and today I'm back to share another open world buildcraft video. But today we have something a little bit more special and unique, and that today we're focusing on a beta character, a new Visions of Eternity elite spec, and I wanted to use this time to discuss this elite spec, how it works in open world PvE specifically, and things that I'd like to see changed, feedback, etc. So this is both an open world buildcraft video and a beta feedback video, and we're starting today with the Elementalist elite spec for Visions of Eternity, which is the Evoker. For multiple reasons. One, I think it's the elite spec I'm the most excited about. I think long term for the game is this Evoker spec, and two, because I think it's also one that needs a lot of feedback as well. I think it's simultaneously what I'm most excited for and the build that I think needs a lot of work. So with that being said, I want to quickly do a Golem rotation on the open world build that I've picked for today, one of the open world builds I've picked for today, and then we'll talk about it and get into the details of how the build works, feedback for the build, and then general feedback for the class as a whole. So I'm going to set up the Golem and we'll get started. Okay, so as you can see, the damage in an open world setting with the way I have the build set up is a little bit low, right? We're hovering around like 10-ish for the whole time. Got a little low toward the end, but I was doing the rotation kind of poorly. The rotation's a little bit speedy and a bit clunky, and I was really just pressing buttons randomly because I think you're allowed to do that in a little bit on sword dagger setup. But as far as the build goes, this build is running full celestial gear, so full Selly and everything. And we're on a beta setup, so I couldn't get the build perfect just the way I liked. I forget that they don't put all the runes and sigils in the box that you get for the beta characters. So as far as runes, we're running Superior Rune of the Eagle. In the actual game, if I had access to all of my stuff, which I forgot to put in the bank before this beta, this would be Superior Rune of the Pack, so that we get precision, but also boon duration. And then this would be a superior Sigil of Strength. I managed to find a minor Sigil of Strength and just put it here just to like shore up the might uptime a little bit, but might uptime will be much better with the full setup. And then I also have a superior Sigil of Accuracy, and then the Relic of Mistburn, which helps us hit crit cap and get, again, helps us with their might uptime, which is can be difficult. If you do the combos a little bit better, you can combo field, right? If I like put this combo field and then I blast an earth, can get a bunch of might stacks and keep up the might a lot easier. But you have to be really conscientious. Like you have to be really like aware of what you're doing and do like a really solid rotation to do that. And I think that's less fun. And we'll get into why that is later. So yeah, those are the build. That's the gear, the gear that we have. Um, as far as traits, we're going electric enchantment, and then we actually shouldn't be on Soothing Evasion. So this is part of the reason the damage was low, is as I was testing Soothing Evasion out earlier and forgot to change it, we should be on Elemental Balance, and so that DPS number should be uh, about 15% higher. So think like 11k, between 11 and 12k is what the real number should be. Um, and then Familiar's Blessing, this is how we're getting quickness. So when we have the hare equipped as our special pet, our familiar, when we activate the familiar skill, it generates quickness for us, and that's how we're able to play a quickness build on this build. How we're reaching crit cap is we're using enhanced potency, which means our fury gives an extra 15. So fury now gives 40% crit chance, and then we get another 10% from Relic of Mistburn when we're above 10 stacks of might. And so with that, that's a bonus 50% crit chance. So we're at 50 right now. So if we give ourselves fury and enough might, we get to 100%, right? So, uh, as far as the build plays, I think it's a fun build, but obviously it's got a few hang-ups. One, it's really spammy. You have to be really actively pressing all of your skills in order to build up the charges for your familiar. So you get 2 stacks on the familiar that you're attuned to. So the air familiar, I get 2 stacks every time I use an ability, and then on everything else I get 1 stack. And then once you get 6, you can activate the familiar skill. And then once you activate the familiar skill 3 times, you can do the empowered familiar skill, which is just a bigger, blastier, more flashy, more damaging version of the base skill. Sometimes it's a little different too. But okay, so let me despawn this golem real fast. Move current golem. And yeah, so the things I like about this build are that it plays like it plays fast. It allows you to use the sword dagger combo, which I think is the most fun weapon combo on Elementalist, in my opinion. And it allows you to rotate through the stuff really fast. And then as far as the other traits, I forgot to talk about like the other trait lines. Is we're taking arcane and then water, and this is just a really typical flex line. So we have the water line for survivability, where we're taking piercing shards, so damage increase on vuln, damage increase when we dodge or evade, we heal, and then soothing power. So every time we attune to water, we get the soothing mist. And we get the empowered soothing mist so that we heal a little bit on this build. I think without this trait line, Elementalists can really struggle in open world, but again, we're not going to linger too long because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Then we're taking the arcane line. Again, this is just to shore up might, do a little bit more damage, shore up our concentration uptime, decrease the recharge of our attunement swapping, boons on disable, boons on attunement swap, etc. You get the idea. We're swapping through the elements quickly in order to generate boons, in order to do damage, and hopefully round out the build. So, like I said, I think the build's fun. It's a little weak in open world. Now, if you do the rotation really, really well, obviously people have realized that these builds are really strong and really broken in organized PvE play. But I think in open world, they're a little bit lacking. And so the big thing that I think is the biggest holdup is this, is like you want to run this quickness setup, but in reality, there's actually a much better way to play Evoker, and that's with the fire setup. So this is the second build that I have for Evoker open world, and this is also running full Selly, but instead of being a power quickness focused build, it is a Condi condition damage mono element focused build. So we're running Superior Runes of Trapper, we're running Superior Sigil of Bursting, Superior Sigil of Smoldering. we're not running Relic of Zakiros typically. There's another relic I want to run on this, but I didn't have access to it, which is the Relic of the Phenom, which lets our meditations and cantrips, which we have all meditations and cantrips on this utility bar here, give us protection, and that's the way I want to run it, but I don't have access to that relic, unfortunately, on this beta character. Uh, and then we're running Scepter, Dagger, and the goal of this build is to just kind of camp fire as long as you can. We're running fire, Condi top line, and then the same water line just so that we can switch out of fire when we need to. And then as far as the traits for Evoker, we're still running the hair. This gives us access to Fury uptime and a little bit more damage. We're running Fiery Might, which gives us permanent Might uptime as long as we stick to Fire Attunement and are applying Burning. And then we're running Familiar's Focus, which our Familiar skill heals us, and we also do more condition damage because we're channeling the Firefox. Okay, so I'm gonna do another rotation on the Golem this time, and you're gonna see why I think this build, it's kind of like the Evoker Elite spec as a whole is kind of designed around the Fire spec, and then everything else is kind of just not as good. And you'll see why when you see this number. So really quickly, I'm gonna do another Golem pull, and then we'll talk about it again. And so you can see on another setup, which is much easier and in some ways a lot safer because you can stay at ranged for most of this rotation, you're doing a ton more damage, probably 50% more damage, if not a little bit more than 50% more damage, um, right at 17k. And this isn't even the most damaging DPS oriented setup you could set up. Right, we're in full Selly gear. We're taking the water trait line just so that we do have defenses when we pop out of fire if we need them. Um, but I think one of the biggest holdups for this build for the elite spec as a whole to me is I think that fire works really well. And then air kind of works if you're really speedy and fast. But then the other familiars are kind of just not up to par with those two. Fire is like a 10 out of 10. Air's like an 8.5 out of 10, and then the toad and the otter, the water and the earth familiars just aren't integrated very well, and I think those are the ones that need the most work. But I think this build's really interesting. Again, it's more defensive than you'd think because you are allowed to camp fire at range, and then when you need help, when you need healing, or when you need defensive boons or defensive utility, you can pop into these other specs. So like a big thing you can do with the Scepter build is you can use this Scepter 2 Rock Barrier, and this just gives you 250 toughness on a 30-second cooldown. So you can just pop this at the beginning of a fight, and then just go camp fire, and then you're really tanky. Right, if we go to our tab, you're almost 3k armor on Ellie with 21k health, which is pretty good for Elementalist. Uh, excuse me, one second. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to do is go actually show you how the builds play in open world. So we're going to go to some of our typical haunts, our typical places to practice and to play the builds and just show you like, hey, these builds work in open world. So we're gonna go to one of my personal favorites first. There's been a lot of people at these things this week, so we'll see if it's empty. It might not be, and we might have to pick somewhere else to go. Yeah, so there's been a ton of people over here lately. Okay. We're not gonna kill it. No, we can try. Whatever. So we're not going to kill this in the time, so you're going to see it despawn, but we can just show you how the build kind of stands up to this guy pretty well. Got to like 50% in under a minute, so, you know. Alright, so he's going to despawn it, and we're going to start it up again. But as you can see, the survivability is really good. You have a lot of tools to stay alive on this build. And again, this is the hair setup, the air hair setup that we're doing right now. And so I think the biggest thing on this build is you just can't get too obsessed with your DPS rotation, or you're just gonna get bursted and die. Right, you have to stay vigilant. It's not just a face tanky build. Like, you need to like pay attention to what you're doing and dodge stuff, but like that. But if you stay aware, it's pretty survivable. It's got a lot of tools in its belt. You have good CC, you have good sustain, you have lots of blocks with the Elementalist, normal utilities. You have good movement too, which is another thing that's this build is good at. See me just face tanking stuff, which I mean you can do, which is nice. Like, a lot of Ellie builds can't just face tank stuff and do damage. Again, the damage for the air hair is a little low, but it's fine, right? We're getting the job done. My biggest complaint about this build is that I think it's just worse Catalyst. Like, I think Catalyst just does all this stuff better. Maybe not in as much of a fun way, but it just does all this stuff better, which is a big problem. And so if we go to the fire version, so this plays really differently. So on this one, you kind of want to stay away from anything that you're attacking. Like, if you can stay at range, that's good for you. And then you switch into the water when you need it, and the earth when you need it. But you really should just be camping this fire attunement as best you can, and just blasting and just burning people down from range. Let's see, we're gonna die here. So like I said, this one, it's not necessarily better because it requires you to do more things correctly that you don't have to be as concerned about doing on the other builds. Like you just have to play better because you just have less tools on this setup, on the fire setup. But it is more damage if you're in a safer scenario, like if you're against stuff that's not going to murder you, like this hero point. It is more damage. So again, this build's not bad, but it's not as good. Like again, I think the damage numbers can be deceptive. I think the sword dagger build's still a lot better, a lot more intuitive to play, even if it's a little bit harder. And then obviously you see this is one of the bigger bugs. So like if you have the empowered familiar skill charged, it's going to stay on you even if you switch attunements, and you can't really do anything until you use this again in the new spec. And I think it actually even, so like if I use it on the spec, I think it procs like the quickness if I use this. Yeah, see, so it procs the quickness to use it even though I'm set up on the fire. So that's kind of a bug. Another bug that a lot of people have talked about is how the familiar skill, if you use the empowered and then immediately use the regular skill afterward, it cancels your empowered familiar skill. So that's something that definitely needs to be worked on, especially with an elite spec that is so naturally spammy. Like you want to press the buttons as fast as you can, and so that's pretty bad. That overlapping the familiar skills kind of cancels them out. Another thing that I think is not super great is the utilities are kind of all one note and boring. The fire one's okay. The fire one's genuinely okay, and the otter one's good if you're running otter. Like if you're trying to do a heal spec and running water otter, I think like this one's not. Again, they're not bad. They're just like you'd much rather be running your core utility skills, especially in open world, and especially I don't think Toad Fortitude is very good. But like I said, these are fun builds. So if we go to another spot, if we go to another testing spot, I like to do is the fire gin over here in Path of Fire. So again, just to showcase, like, hey, like these builds are functional. Like these are working builds. You could get away with using these in open world today. Like I know this is just a beta, but like these builds are working. Like this is one of the classes that has effective stuff going on. I think it just needs some tweaks to really make it. Again, I think this will be the best spec they release. And you might hear some dogs, but that's okay. So if we come over here to these gin. These can be some tough customers usually, but I think with this build, you have a lot of answers for your tougher opponents, like the fire gin, right? Like we're getting their CC bars down, we're blowing them up with good damage, and then I missed that skill a little bit. But this is also a build that has like you're allowed to dodge on, which I like. And these gins strip boons, so try not to look at the boon bar too much. And you could obviously probably avoid the boon strip, but I'm trying to showcase that, like, hey, like in this scenario with these, there's with these enemies that do a lot of nasty things to you, you have a lot of tools to deal with them, right? So fire gin, pretty easy. And then the last thing is just like general open world play, and so I actually want to go down here. That music's going crazy.
If you see animals exhibiting unusual behaviors, do not approach. We have received reports of numerous unprovoked attacks.
Okay. Alright. And then the last thing is just like general open world play, like how does the build play when you're against weaker enemies in like general open world? So that's the last thing. I mean, Elite's not weak, but Where are you going, bud? The tiger's not your enemy. I'm your enemy. Come back. What are you doing, my guy? Wow, this dude literally said no. He's like, nope, we're running. I'm going back to spawn. Oh, he just said like, hey, we're not fighting today. Wow, that was some great NPC behavior there, right there. Okay. All right. He eventually started fighting us. But as you can see, right, like it handles switching from mob to mob really well. You have a lot of tools again to move around, to get onto people, to do fun stuff in the open world. Like we're doing damage, we're taking stuff out quickly, we're highly mobile. Oh, targeting went crazy there. We have stun breaks. We have tools to deal with people. But yeah. And then, like I said, the fire one works really well too, especially in a scenario like this, right? When you just kind of stay at range and just use these abilities off cooldown, and you just kind of burn things to death outside of range. So if we go up to like this hero challenge up here, let's see if I can.
I'll do what I must.
Right, on this one we don't have quickness, and so that can sometimes hurt you, but I think what's great about this build in particular is it allows you to AFK Fire Scepter, which I think is the like I love Scepter in the fire attunement, like these skills, like the two, like Dragon's Tooth, Phoenix, and then the auto attack, Flame Strike. These are all great, but then I really hate every other part of Scepter. Like I dislike all of it. Like it's just all things I don't like, skills I don't like that I think are clunky and very 2012. But what's good is you can just campfire. You can just campfire tune it. And so like, right, this guy respawned. And he's invisible. This End of Dragons just loves, I don't know. End of Dragons had a lot of weird, just kind of nasty mechanics. The Saboteurs being my least favorite of the bunch. As you can see, like we're taking damage, but then we can just pop into water and kind of undo all the nasty things that are happening to us. If we use some CC, all right. And then let me go over. Can I cleanse? No. Okay. All right. As you can see, the fire one works. It's just not as good. It's not as fun. It's not as reactive. It's not as powerful, I think, long term. But these are the two builds that I found that worked, and the things that I liked. Right, these are things that I liked. I think the way it plays with the fire, with the Firefox is a good play style, and especially in like group PvE, it'll be pretty good and easy. And then the air hair is a little faster, a little more active gameplay, and again, I think that's ultimately really good. I think, like I said, it plays too much like Catalyst. Like you're basically just doing everything you do on Catalyst, except just a little clunkier, a little faster. Um, but it's good. But now, really quickly, let's go into the stuff that I do not like about the spec. So we're gonna switch to. I have two evokers on my beta character, so we're gonna switch to a second evoker. And this one, I tried to make builds. So my goal was to make a build for each familiar, and what happened is the fire build and the air build both worked pretty well. I really liked both those builds. Now, the water build and the earth build are not good. So I'm not gonna waste a bunch of time of like playing through these builds and like showing you how bad they are because like they just really aren't good builds. I could probably cook more, spend a little bit more time and try to really figure out how to play them, but ultimately they're just not up to snuff, especially in an open world setting. I think for open world, both Otter and the Toad don't really do anything spectacular or good. The Toad build was kind of funny. I mean, it's like perma CC, like the. Here, I'll just show you. So, it's like what I ended up deciding to try to do is just like a full on specialized element, earth only, um, and just like using the relic of the Midnight King, and just using the perma stuns. So if I like to generate boons. And it's like, I mean, what I think is really funny is in a PvP, in a competitive game mode setting, I think this is hilarious, is like just perma stunning people, and like the damage is, I mean, the damage exists, like it's real damage. Like if I set this build up better, it could compete damage-wise uh, with the air here, but it's just not, like, it's not compelling gameplay, I don't think. It is funny though. It's definitely funny. But I think my biggest issues with the Toad is that it's all about like protection and defensiveness. But I feel like if you're running the Toad, you're already like you're already gonna have permaprot, and so there's just not really a good reason to run the Toad in PvE. It's just like everything else is just so much better. Um, and yeah, so I think the Toad has good competitive avenues for like good lanes and competitive modes, but I think in PvE it's just not going to be a big thing, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think that's good. That's a good spot for it. It's like this one, like it'll be good in PvP and World versus World, and then in PvE it won't be that good. But that allows it to be balance focused and tuned for the other thing and set up for the other thing, which is okay with me. Um, Now, the Otter is really interesting because it's actually I really like the Otter like a lot. Like I think the animations are cool. What it's trying to do is cool. Um, so right, this one heals, and then when you get the big one, it's like this big giant AOE stun. It gives alacrity if you have the second Grandmaster trait equipped. Um, but the unfortunate thing about it, so if I remove is that it just doesn't have damage potential in a PvE setting. And so like there's two ways you could look at this. You could say, hey, like it's not meant to be that, and it's meant to be. So if I weapon swap here, it's meant to be this solo heal class, right? Where you're over here just spamming heals. Right. Right, there's a really good um, heal spec, dedicated heal spec, hiding in Evoker here. Like really good, really fun, really powerful heal spec hiding here. But I think it just doesn't. There's a couple things that it's lacking, right? The first thing that a lot of people already know is boon up time, right? Is when you're playing a healer in organized PvE, you need prot, you need fury, you need might, you need regen, which it does have. You need a power. You need a quickness or alacrity boon, right? These premier boons, right? Alacrity or quickness. You need one or the other. Um, but then you also need prod up time. You also need permanent stacks. You also need fury, right? This build does give regen, so you do have regen. But there's just a bunch of other things. You need stability, things like that to compete in the realm of organized group instance content in PvE that this build just doesn't have. Um, on top of that, I think if we go back to like the kind of open world setup that I was hoping to play, so like if I respawn this golem, so there's actually like I think with hammer you can kind of find a decently rhythmic open world setup here. The problem is, right, this damage number is there's not a damage option for water, so you're just kind of stuck in this kind of slow, kind of unimpressive rotation. Which has a lot of healing potential, right? Like you're healing, you're providing alacrity, but it just doesn't do any damage, right? Like it's just not competitive enough from a damage perspective, especially in open world. So I think this is the spec. This is the part of the spec that I think needs the most work. Because I think Otter, it needs to have a DPS option, and a lot of people have talked about this. There's actually a lot of good Evoker feedback around in the beta so far, but I think the biggest thing is it needs a water damage option, right? Water is traditionally healing line, but it's also got a power damage focus as well. And I think if they leaned into that a little bit more with the straight line and had that as an option, there could be a lot of fun things you could do with the water. And that would mean there's three whole different modes, like right, like modalities, not modes like game modes, but like modalities that you could play Evoker in. So right, you could have the fire mode, you could have the hair mode, you could have the water mode, and these are all different, unique ways to play one single elite spec, which is why I think this is the elite spec I'm most excited about. It just has the most potential, and I think there are just a few tweaks they could make to really um, bring that out and make this probably one of the best elite specs in the game, to be honest. If they get some of these things cleaned up and right. So um, to go into what I think some of those things are. So the first thing, if we go back to my little Earth Toad build, right? The first thing that I think needs a little bit of a change is specialized elements. So a big feedback, a lot of people have already voiced this feedback, but I do think weapon swap would be the way to make this a more appealing option as a Grandmaster trait. I think it is powerful on the Firefox by itself already, um, but I think the other elements it's just not a great option, and you're giving up a lot of things by playing mono element with one weapon set, even with the skill recharge and etc. So the biggest thing, this is the thing I would do to fix this trait is remove the recharge time reduction, gone. The second thing is skills to charge familiar go back to 3, go back from 2 to 3, and then introduce weapon swap. That's the last thing. So like you're removing all the power from the build, giving you mono element, but introducing weapon swap, so you can swap your weapons. And then on top of weapon swap, make it to where the abilities that empower you when you swap activate on weapon swap. So a big one's like Sunspot, right? So gain a fire aura and damage nearby foes when you tune to fire. If we go to the water, heal nearby allies when you tune to water. So what you do is the power of this is your one element, two weapon sets, and then you activate the on swap mechanics of Elementalist when you weapon swap. And I think that would be a really great way to introduce flair and difference and cool ways to play Elementalist that you can't play in other ways on the class. And I think this would make, like, this skill alone, doing that for this skill would make Evoker the greatest elite spec they've ever released. It would just be the most depth you could possibly have in an elite spec by allowing you to play two Elementalist weapons at once and by interacting with the spec in this totally new, different, unique way. So that's the biggest change, I think. And this is the change I think a lot of people have already come up with in other ways, different ways, but that's the biggest thing I would do. So number two, so if I'm gonna go back to the build I had here. Alright, so that's the big one. That's the big easy fix. But the harder fixes are this trait web here. The Evoker trait web. I think there's just a few changes that I would make to make this a way more appealing spec. So really quickly, I'm gonna drink some water and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so like I said, I think the biggest thing that they need to change, other than the specialized elements change, is this trait web. I think there's a lot of dead traits in this line, and then a lot of traits that are just too specific to one element and just aren't very appealing options. So the first thing I think is these adept traits, this first tier of traits. So I think electric enchantment is good. This one's fine. This one's interesting. I like it. Keep it. It's good. All right. But if we go to the second one, blazing restoration, burn nearby enemies and grant regeneration to nearby allies when you use a healing skill. This is a dead trait to me. As far as PvE is concerned, this is just not strong enough, not useful enough. Just kind of a dead trait, in my opinion. Like, obviously, like maybe other people are like super stoked about one stack of burning over 10 seconds doing 3k damage and just a little bit of regen. Maybe in PvP game modes, this is like, oh, it's so broken. Like, I can't believe you can heal and do one stack of burning at the same time. Like, oh my god. But, in PvE, not a, like this is a never take, right? Blazing restoration is a never take option, and I think this could be something interesting. So this is problem number one. Number two, earth and fortification. This one, the issue again is it's like gives you protection when you disable. Like very similar to elemental lockdown, right? Protection when you disable an earth. This is kind of a similar idea, but it's protection when you disable it all. It's useful, but a solo boon for yourself, right? So you can't give this protection to other people. One, not good. And then two, if you're running Earth Toad, right? If you're running Earth Toad, you're probably already short up on protection uptime, right? Because you're probably not running mono element Earth. And if you are, right, like we were before, but like it's just why? Like what? It's just not a valuable skill. I think this is too specific to the earth element. Needs to be something else, right? I think these are two free spots that could be something way more interesting um, than what they are. Way more interesting, way more impactful. All right, number three on the trait line that I don't like is fiery might. So, like I said, if we went back to the other class, right, is on a Firefox build, this trait is great, right? This is an awesome trait. It's free might uptime without having to think about it at all, right? Free 25 stacks of might, super great, awesome. The problem is, it really only works if you're running the Firefox, and on every other class, the might uptime's too short, and it's not going to be that helpful. And on top of that, it's competing with a 15% damage buff slash 15% damage reduction, right? This is basically, there's a trait in Ranger, in survival instincts or survival skills, whatever, Ranger. That's this exact trait, like verbatim. Like this is just a reprint of that trait. Um, but it's just not like it's not a compelling, right? It's 10% burning, right? So it's good. It's good on Firefox only, right? It's might generation only good if you're running a burning build on Firefox. Every other build, terrible. Never touch, never take. And I think that's bad for the spec, I think. For a spec that's so complex, so deep, so flexible as this needs a little bit of a change. This needs to be something else, I think. I think the might generation needs to be brought back into the class as a whole, maybe. And I have a change specifically to address this, and this could be a different skill. Elemental balance, again, I think this one's fine, right? So here's so electric enchantment, fine. Elemental balance, fine. Um, enhanced potency, fine. Familiar's prowess, again, fine. I don't have problems with these. But then these four are the biggest issue: is blazing restoration, earth and fortification, fiery might, and then lastly, soothing evasion. Right? Soothing evasion. I mean, like another heal on dodge, and it's so terrible, right? Like if we go up here to cleansing wave is a 2k heal on dodge. This is a 200 heal on dodge plus regen, and it doesn't even say this, but it only works in combat, right? Like if we dodge here, it doesn't do anything. It only works in combat. So if we turn the golem back on, combat, and then we dodge, right? We get the regen, and we get the heal, or I think we get the heal. I don't actually know. Um, but it's just not a compelling skill. It's too niche, right? It only really does something good when you're in Otter. And again, the healing on dodge is just not a fun mechanic. Like it's not something you don't want to waste your dodge roll to heal. And like if you're dodging something, you're already avoiding the instance of damage usually. So it's just like uh, it doesn't work. I don't like it. It's not good. I think again, it's just another wasted skill. So these four are just wasted spots that could be something interesting. Now, the biggest shift I think that would really help the spec a ton, right? So these four is just think of something else. Think of something else for these four. But the biggest shift I think is this one. Familiar's Blessing is like this is a hot take, but I think if you remove the Condi cleanse and made these self boons instead of group boons, right? Instead of nearby allies, number of targets 5, it's just boons for yourself, and make this baseline for the class, right? So like if I'm running Earth Toad, my Earth Toad familiar skill gives protection. If I'm running Water Otter, my baseline familiar gives alacrity to myself, just myself. And then same thing with hair. This one gives quickness. And then the Firefox gives might, and that's where you fix this fiery might is make this might 3 stacks, make it baseline self might, and then you can change this to something actually good. Right? You can change fiery might to something that's a little more versatile, a little more universal. That's not pigeonholed you into Firefox. Right? So make these baseline. All right. And then, like I said, you have 4 open slots here. And so I think what you do is you take a master slot, like you take this Soothing Evasion slot, and in Soothing Evasion, so like going back to like how I was talking about how you could have a healing class on water, right? So you could have like a water mono healing class, right? Alacrity is now baseline. And what you could do, instead of Soothing Evasion, you have a skill that turns all your self boons into group boons. So right, so now you're generating regen and alacrity for your group. Now you're generating protection for your group. Now you're generating might for your group, right? And this is a way to balance that out, right? It's a way to let you play with all of these cool ways to play, all of these cool grandmasters, right? Like Familiar's Focus and Specialized Elements. But it also competes with these DPS related traits, right? Elemental Balance and Fiery Might. And this is again, this would work for your quickness setup as well, right? Is let's say you're taking Familiar's Focus to take this boon share ability and then run hair, right? Your quickness build. You have to give up elemental balance, and then whatever damage trait, whatever DPS option you'd put in this top one in replace of fiery might, um, it would be this boon share. Like to take the boon share, you have to give up damage or give up something else valuable, right? And so I think that's a good way to keep these playstyle changes open. So right, like keep the specialized elements option available, especially if you're water element. I'll go back to that, right? Like you want to be able to play mono element water as a healer in group content, because it just seems fun and it would be good. It's a good healer already, but you need the alacrity, right? So we've made alacrity baseline, then we made a trait that shares our boons to other people, and so um, now we have a real heal spec, right? Now we have a real heal spec. We have lots of options for the heal spec, and then Familiar's Blessing can just be something different, right? It could be a new spec, and this is the last one I wanted to talk about, right? So we've talked about how you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is the fifth one, right? Familiar's Blessing is the fifth one. 5 kind of dead traits, right? Like traits that I think could be better, right? And you could fill these 4 with whatever. But I think the last one specifically, right? This third Grandmaster, this would be a good place to put a damage otter, right? Is a DPS otter Grandmaster trait, and so all it would do, right, is instead of otter just being solo healing and regen, right, the splash is you could have like a Norn inspired Grandmaster where otter now has a power DPS option. So now Splash also does damage, right? Does damage and maybe does chill or something. And you could call it like frigid, whatever, like some icy fun name. Because this is the Norn, right? This is the Norn Elementalist Elite spec, and this would allow you to play Otter in an open world setting, um, with that cool healing potential, but also now doing enough damage to be viable in the open world, right? Not being totally locked down to healing. It would play really well with the piercing shards, with flow like water. And now you have a really cool way to play water otter in the open world as well. And again, so this is just a lot of thinking, a lot of suggestions. But at the end of the day, I think this spec is both, like I said, it's both in a really great spot and has the most potential to be better, which is crazy to say, right? It's already, in my opinion, the best of the elite specs, and it has the most potential to be better. And so I think my hope with making this video is to show like, hey, we've got fun stuff going on here. Like this Evoker build's good, right? It's really great. But there's just a few tweaks that need to be made to make it really perfect. Make it an elite spec you can really sink your teeth into, something that feels great to play. And so the last thing I just want to talk about is, before we end the video, because this is getting really long. So we talked about the 2 open world builds that I think work, 2 other open world builds that I think aren't very good, with the frog, the toad, and the otter that just need a little bit of help. And then lastly is comparing it to other classes. So the big one is Catalyst. Is, like I said, I think it plays really similarly to Catalyst, the Evoker, and Catalyst play really similarly. But the biggest problem is that Catalyst is just like dwarfs it in every way other than DPS potential. So like, yeah, I think Evoker has more DPS potential, and it's a little bit more interesting playstyle wise, but I think Catalyst is just an easier, more straightforward, and more powerful version of Evoker, right? So like already, like just look at this boon bar. Like look at this crazy boon bar that we've managed to set up here. And this is way easier to play, in my opinion, right? More damage than the power setup on Air Hair. And look at all these boons. We got Perma Prot, Perma Resolution, Perma Regen, Perma Quickness, Perma Fury, Perma Might. And we're not even really trying here, right? Like, I'm just talking to you, just doing my own thing. And this, it's just way easier, way stronger. It has way more synergy. It just has way more options. Like, and this is like the most defensive way you can set this up, right? I have the water attunement, I have the arcane attunement, I have purely I have like as most utility and boon oriented as it can be, and it's still doing right 11k, 11k. It's super easy to play. It's a little spammy, just like Evoker is a little spammy, but like it's just a stronger, better version of Evoker. And so I think this is the biggest qualm I have is that Evoker needs its own lane, and like I said, those are the biggest things it can do to have its own lane is have more unique playstyles, right? Which is happens by fixing specialized elements, making weapon swap a thing. That's number one. Number two is give Otter a DPS Grandmaster trait. That's number two. And number three is fix the trait lines. And now you have a lot of room to add more boon sharing. And then, like I said, four, make those key boons baseline for the familiars. And that can let you play with a lot more things, do a lot more with the spec, and make it a lot more palatable, a lot more enjoyable, a lot more straightforward, and less like right now it's great in the hands of super skilled players, super fast piano hands players, in a DPS setting. Outside of that, not so good, and maybe competitive with the Earth Toad, it's kind of good, but outside of those settings, just not that compelling. You'd rather play Catalyst, you'd rather play Tempest, you'd even rather play Weaver from like a unique interestingness, like compelling, unique gameplay perspective. You'd rather play Weaver. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Hopefully, I laid them out relatively decently. Um, we'll go back to we'll go back to this one. But yeah, so this has been Evoker. This has been my thoughts. I hopefully shared some cool builds that you can use on Evoker. Hopefully, you learned some stuff about the class. Maybe got some insights about how it could be better, what we could fix, a few of the bugs that exist. I'm not really that interested in bug testing. I think from a bug perspective, it's not that terrible. But yeah. So this is Evoker, and hopefully these changes are something people can think about. Maybe it's not maybe not everything is something people want. Like devs don't want all of these changes. Maybe they don't want Evoker to be this like super giga spec. But yep, these are my thoughts, and hopefully this was a cogent and compelling showcase of Evoker and the things that Evoker could be. So, see you later, bye.